Hi, my name is Michael, and this video that you're watching right now is part of a video project that I've been trying to get started for over 3 years. This project is about sharing your story with the world and an important message that you want to share. For me, the reason why this video exists today is to hopefully share my story to inspire someone out there to create a positive change in their life. I mentioned that this video I've been trying to get up for 3 years. I've actually filmed several versions of this and I deleted them. I never published a version of this video before because I was afraid. I was really afraid of what people are going to think, what they're going to say. I was afraid to be judged, I wasn't ready to share my story with the world, and fear held me back from doing this project. And then today, someone said the exact things that I needed to hear, and they told me this. They said, Michael, your story is so beautiful and inspirational. Someone in the world really needs to hear this right now, and if you don't share this video, you're denying them of that opportunity, because you never know. This video could really impact people in a positive way. Just have the courage to share it, and don't worry about being judged, or don't worry about what people are going to say, even if it's negative. Just put yourself out there. So to the person that said that to me today, thank you so much. It really helped me and inspired me to do this. So without further ado, my name is Michael Alvaro, and this is my story. I want to tell you about who I am, where I grew up, and where I am today, and what I'm doing in the future. So for me, my parents are both immigrants, and they come from the Philippines, and I'm the oldest of 2 brothers. So I've got 2 younger brothers. They're twins, and we have a 9-year age gap. Right after me, my mom actually had 2 miscarriages, but fortunately we had 2 other babies that came after that to make up for the difference. Growing up for me was really hard. I experienced a lot of negative things in my life as a kid. The first was bullying. I think from the age of 5 all the way up to 17, I experienced some version of bullying in my life. The first experience of bullying is, I can remember people making fun of me because of my weight. My mom and my grandma, they loved me so much, but they would always feed me. I can remember just constantly eating as a kid, just like every couple of hours my grandma would be making something for me, and then my mom comes home and then she feeds me again as well. So I was a really big kid growing up. Right now I'm about 5'10", about 165 pounds, and I remember when I was about 10 years old, I don't know what my height was, but I was about the same weight. So if you can imagine, someone half my height being the same weight, you can get a picture of how big I was. The second challenge that I had when I was a kid was also being shy. I was super shy, and I had a really hard time talking to people. I didn't have a lot of communication skills, primarily because I was alone most of the time. My parents worked really hard, and I didn't have brothers until I was 9 years old. So most of the time I was just by myself. I was at school most of the time by myself as well. I was also very sheltered in my life. My parents didn't really want me to play outside. In my neighborhood, I was the only kid who didn't play outside with the other kids. And I remember growing up multiple years watching kids outside in front of our house just playing. And I would spend entire summers sitting at the window looking at them, being sad that I couldn't go out and play with them. outside of the bullying and all those things that were going on, there were two very important moments in my childhood that really shaped my future. The first moment was when I was about 7 years old. When I was 7, we were taking a family trip to the Philippines. And it was meant to be this positive, great trip, to have this family reunion back in the Philippines. But instead, it was something very sad because the year before, my grandfather passed away, my mother's dad. And we were going to the Philippines this year, 1997, to visit my grandma because she was very sick. And so when we get there, it's a very somber mood. Of course, people are happy to see each other, but my grandmother's not doing too well. In fact, she's just lying in the bed most days and not really talking too much. And a few days into our trip, I remember seeing my uncles and aunts just start running into the house and running into my grandmother's bedroom. The kids followed suit. They start running as well, and I go after them. So there we were, all 30 or 40 of us. I lost count how many people there were. And we're crowded around my grandmother's bed. Everyone's in tears. My aunt, who's a nurse, and her job was to look after my grandmother every day, she started checking my grandmother's pulse. And when she couldn't feel anything in her arms, she kneeled down, rested her ears on my grandmother's chest. She started bawling her eyes out, and we knew. Everyone knew. Imagine being 8 years old and watching your grandmother die. Imagine what kind of effect that would have on an 8-year-old kid. At 8 years old, you don't really understand what life and death is yet, or what that means. A few days later, they deliver my grandmother's body in a casket, and they leave it in my grandparents' house. And of course, at 8 years old, you don't really know why or understand what's going on. And of course, for us in the Western world, this is not common too. But it's a tradition in the Philippines. And what happened was, throughout that week, people would come, different people around the town, and they would pay their respects to my grandmother. So one by one, every couple of hours, a family came by. And this was all strange to me. It was very new. I didn't understand what was going on. But I just assumed that this is the way things were. But as an adult, when I reflect on that, it reminded me of how important my grandmother was to the community and how much of an impact she made. So that was the first major event in my life, watching my grandmother die. The next major event happened a couple of years after that. So fortunately for us, my brothers were born, I guess, about a year after my grandmother had passed away. And then about 6 or 8 months after that is when the second moment happened. And the second moment is very memorable. So it's a typical day. My dad picks me up from school and brings me home, and my grandmother's there. My grandmother being my dad's mom. She's still alive. And she's the one looking after my 2 younger brothers while my mom is still at work. A couple of hours pass, and my dad comes down with a suitcase. He's got a suitcase with him, and so I'm like, "Oh, Dad, where are you going?" And he comes up to me and he says, "Son, I'm going on vacation for a little while, I want you to look after your mom and your brothers for me. You're the man of the house now. And, I was about 9 years old at this point, and I didn't think too much of it. I've seen my parents go away on vacation before. I was like, sure, Dad, no problem. And then he leaves. He goes away, and then a couple hours later, my mom comes home from work. And when she arrives, of course, the first question she asks is, well, where's your dad? I look at her, and I was like, well, Dad went away on vacation. And she was shocked. She's like, what? What do you mean he went on vacation? Where is he? And then she goes into the other room to talk to my grandmother, and the next thing you know, all I hear is yelling, screaming, crying. I didn't understand what was going on. I was 9 years old. About a month later, I was talking to my mom, and the question that I asked her was, hey, Mom, when is Dad going to come home? And she turns to me, and she just started crying. She said, I don't know. About a month later, my dad shows up again. Comes home. And it was a Saturday morning, and I'm just, in my own little happy place doing my usual Saturday morning routine. I'm watching cartoons and playing with Legos. It's like, it's the thing that I look forward to the most after spending a week, getting bullied. And it's the thing I look forward to the most. And then my dad comes home, and as soon as he steps in and, he greets me, and all I hear is my mom just flying down the stairs, and she's yelling and screaming. And my dad's not really yelling back. He's just kind of taking it in and just, I guess he's trying to explain himself. And there I am, sitting here listening to this, and I'm totally confused. I don't know what's going on. I don't know why my mom's doing that. All I know is that I'm scared, and I start crying. I grab my Legos, I go upstairs, and I shut myself in my room. I really wish there was MP3 players back in 1998, because I could really use some music to drown out that noise of just my mom screaming and yelling. They go upstairs, and they're in their room, and all I can hear is my mom. But I also hear my brothers. At this point, they're only 6 months years old. 6 or 8 months years old. 6 months. And they're crying. I really want to go and check on them and make sure they're okay, but I'm just too afraid. I don't want to go in there and hear what's going on. But a few moments later, I can hear something dropping down the stairs, like paper or something. Books, maybe. So I open my door a little bit just to peep. And what I see is my mom throwing all my dad's stuff down the stairs. His clothes, photo books. She starts ripping photos. And then when she goes back in, she goes back to yelling again. And at this point, I'm just devastated, just constantly, just tears coming down my face. I don't know what's going on. So I go down the stairs. And I'm picking up the pieces, picking up the ripped photos. And there's a knock at the door. And at the front door of the house. And I go check to see who it is. It's our neighbor, a man named Nelson. And I think we were blessed because we had the most beautiful neighbors in the world. Nelson and his wife, Regina, they're the most beautiful people that I've ever met. You know, they're both teachers, high school teachers, and they're also, you know, devout Christians who go to church every week, and just the most beautiful people, you know, that want to help you and do whatever they can for people. So when I see Nelson at the door, I decide to open the door. So I open it, and he just sees me standing there with tears rolling down my face. So he kneels down, and he says, "I can hear what's going on. I came over just to make sure that you're okay." And then he holds me, and he asks me, "Michael, are you okay?" I just nod. And then he places his hand over my head, and he says, "Don't worry, son. Everything will be all right." And so he goes up the stairs into my parents' room, and he tries to break up the argument. I see him coming down the stairs with my father, and they go outside the house and they talk. And then I hear my mom rushing to the bathroom, and of course she's crying. And that entire time this was going on, probably, I don't know, an hour, my brothers were crying. So I go upstairs. I go over to them, and I say, "Don't worry, guys. Big brother's here now. The three of us are going to be okay." Except it wasn't okay. My parents separated several times when I was a kid. You know, they would have, you know, basically they would get back together, and then my mom would kick him out, and then he'd come back again, and then he'd always do these stupid things. And while all of this is going on, I'm still getting bullied at school. I'm still going through depression and weight problems and trying to figure out adolescence and how to figure out how to be a man. And we fast forward to 2007, and I'm really in a dark place at this point. I actually ended up skipping, I don't know, like 107 days of school. I just didn't want to be there, you know? And what I'd normally do is I'd hang out with other kids that wanted to skip school, or I would just wander around by myself, you know, do graffiti, sit down at a park bench or in a coffee shop and just be by myself, draw, listen to music, and just question life. Why was I here? Why am I going through all these things? What did I do to deserve this? I didn't start anything with anyone. I was never mean. I never said things. In fact, I rarely spoke. So why was this happening to me? I ended up failing grade 11, one because of attendance, and two because, well, if you don't attend and you don't hit minimum grade requirements, then you're forced to fail that year. And when my mom found out, of course she was disappointed, but my mom just had so much love and compassion for me. And she wouldn't give up on me, even though I had given up on myself. She knew that she had to do something for me, but she knew that she couldn't do it herself. So instead, she decided to go on this family vacation. She took me and my brothers, and we went back to the Philippines. One for me, but two, because my uncle was really sick. And my uncle, he was in the military. He was a colonel in the Filipino military before he retired. But he had liver cancer. And the doctors are doing everything that they can, but they know that his time is coming now. So my mom decides to take me there and make sure that we go see him. It's so weird because it's like deja vu all over again. Like 10 years ago in '97, this was the same old thing. We're going and having this reunion, but it's to see a family member die. When we get there, of course it's, mixed emotions. Everyone's happy to see each other. But at the same time, everyone's sad because they know that this is probably going to be the final moments we have with our uncle, their brother. And the next day, I wake up super early. It's probably 5 or 6 in the morning. And I go over to see my uncle. And he's alone. He's in his room, but he's already awake. He's actually looking out the window, looking at the sky. So I go over and we start talking. And he says, "Michael, your mom tells me that you're having a hard life." And I was like, "Yeah." It's like, "Well, tell me about it." So there I am, telling my story. Telling him all the bad things that have been happening and things that I've been going through. And when I'm done talking, he looks at me and he says, "Did your mother ever tell you about your grandparents? The ones that passed away when you were still young?" I was like, "No." And then he proceeds to tell me all these beautiful stories about who my grandparents were. My grandfather, who passed away when I was only 6, I never really knew him or my grandmother. My grandpa, he was a farmer. And the most important thing about my grandpa is that he was a man of community, a man of service. And so every year, little by little, he tried to grow his plantation. And whatever little crops, he had when he went to harvest, he would go around town and he would just give it away for free. He would give to anyone who was struggling financially or anyone that was starving. And one of his good friends who helped him on his farm said, "What are you doing? Like, why are you giving this away for free? You could be selling this stuff and getting more money to help your family. Why are you doing this?" And without hesitation, my grandfather says, "No, my people are dying. I refuse to be selfish." That's the kind of man my grandpa was. And later on in life, he became a teacher. He actually was an elementary school teacher and helped his family and his kids learn English. So that's my grandpa. My grandma, she didn't have a job per se, but, well, that's not true. She did. She had a really important job, and that's raising her kids. And in my mom's family, there's 9 of them, 6 girls and 3 boys, and my mom is the second youngest. Having 9 kids in itself is already an accomplishment and way more bigger job than most people will ever do in their lives. But my mom, or my grandmother, was very much a stay-at-home mom, but she also looked after the kids in the neighborhood, you know, which allowed people to go out and work. So those were my grandparents, you know, the teacher and the caregiver. And as my uncle continues to tell all these beautiful stories, it really put my life in perspective. And at the end, he looks at me and he says, "Michael, now it's your job. Continue your grandparents' legacy." And so there I was, even though I listened to all those things and I agreed that it was important. I didn't want to, you know. I was just stuck in my own little head, and I was upset at people, upset at the world, and I was like, it can't be me, you know. Like, it's got to be one of my other cousins because I didn't like people, you know. Spent most of my life experiencing pain from other people. And I'm too shy. There's no way it's going to be me. About 8 months later, my uncle passed away. And we go back. And standing over him, and then I made a promise. I said, "I understand now. Don't worry, Uncle. I'll continue our grandparents' legacy." But then I didn't, you know. At 18 years old, I made this promise, but for the next 10 years, I did nothing about it. Until about 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, something profound really happened that I can't explain. And for the people that know me really well, they know that I'm not really a religious guy and I'm not really spiritual in any way. I can't say if I believe in a God. If there is, who knows? But 2 weeks ago, I had a dream that I can't explain. It's going to sound a little dark, but the dream was about the end of my life. And you know that expression of at the end of your life, your final moments, your entire life just flashes before your eyes. Have you heard of that? That's kind of what the dream was. It was basically a movie of my entire life. The entire life from start to beginning, and not just me from being a kid to where I was today at now 28 years old. The dream also showed me the future. The future that I'm going to build and all these amazing people that I'm going to help. And it was so powerful, so vivid, and super clear, like a lot of detail, and I remembered all of it. But the most important part was at the very end of the dream. My uncle was there. And he only said one line, and he said this: "Michael, don't forget your promise. don't forget your promise. The next morning, I woke up and I remembered everything, the entire dream, and it was so surreal because typically when I have dreams, they don't really make sense. Like, it's just so random, and most of the time you don't even remember the dream. Things aren't very clear, but this was not the case for this dream. And I promise you that I'm not on any kind of drugs or medication. Like, I don't really do that kind of stuff. Never have. But for some reason that dream happened that night. And the next morning, I just went straight to my notebook and just wrote down everything. I mean, everything. And it was like an out-of-body moment. Like, I couldn't explain what was happening to me. I just knew that I had to write everything down. And when I looked and saw it, I was shocked, because for the most part of my adult life, all I've been trying to do was figure out what my life was supposed to do. What am I supposed to do in my life? Like, I didn't know. I was in constant search for my purpose. And, I struggled because, I would just make arbitrary goals and try my best to figure stuff out, but nothing really stuck. I always had ideas for businesses and things that I wanted to start, but nothing really spoke to me, and nothing really sticked until this dream 2 weeks ago. And now everything changed. So I want to talk about that future that I saw, because it's really important for the work that I'm going to be doing next. But one thing that I can describe in the dream is that the common theme is heroes. The dream is about heroes. My mom is a hero. My uncle was my hero. My grandparents, they're my heroes. And along the way, there's other, fictional heroes that showed up as well. One of my earliest fictional heroes is Mufasa from Lion King. I think came out in 1994? So I was 4 years old when it came out. And I remember when it was released on VHS. If those of you who are too young to know what VHS is, it's basically this little cassette tape. It's black. And you would put it in a machine that's plugged into your TV, and that's what the technology we had to play movies at the time. It's, VHS, Google it, and you'll understand. But man, when my mom bought Lion King on VHS, I watched it every day after school. In the summertime, I watched it multiple times a day. And no matter how many times I watched it, every time we get to that scene where, I should say spoilers. Spoilers, if you haven't watched The Lion King, just pause this video, maybe skip it a minute later. But that scene where Mufasa dies, that always gets me emotionally. I always cry at that scene, and I'm sure if I watch the movie now, I'd probably still cry when Mufasa dies, even though I know it's going to happen. I know it's coming up. I just can't help but be emotional in that moment when Simba is, watching this devastating event happen. And I think one of the reasons why it hurts me so much is because of my strained relationship with my father, and outside of Mufasa, I have other fictional fictional heroes that I really looked up to. Spider-Man, X-Men. A lot of the 90s comic book heroes were really cool. Like, they don't really make a lot of cool cartoons like that anymore. And then later on in life, there was a Japanese anime, which some of you may be familiar with. It's called Naruto. And if you haven't heard of it, I want you to Google it, Naruto. And it's a little, it's corny and cheesy, some of the the episodes, but well, I mean, it is for kids, but you should watch it because the entire series, that is Naruto, and then there's another series called Naruto Shippuden, which is the follow-up series. And the story of Naruto is the story about a young boy who is born without his parents. He's an orphan. And throughout his entire childhood, you know, everyone looked down on him. He lives in a world which is about ninjas. The story is about ninjas, which if you like ninjas, it's definitely a show for you. But he grows up in this village called the Village Hidden in the Leaves. And all the adults in the village in his childhood would look down on him. They ignored him. And they resented him. And the kids would basically do the same thing. And it was so sad because he didn't understand anything. He didn't have parents. He was growing up by himself. You know, the leader of the village was the only semblance of family that he had. And he didn't understand why. Like, why is everyone mean to me? You know? In the first episode of the series, you see him sitting on a swing by himself. And that character really resonate with that character because, you know, I see a lot of him in me. And the story of Naruto is really a coming-of-age story where this young man must go through his life and figure out what he's meant to do and how to become an adult and how to become a leader. And eventually he would go on to do great things and be the hero that saves the village. You know, just that entire series alone created a profound effect on me. So in this dream, aside from the fictional characters and real heroes in my life, it told me to make sure that I honored these heroes, especially the real heroes. So in honor of my grandfather, who was the teacher, I want to build a school. I want to build this elementary school and put his name on it. And going to build it in his hometown. And one thing that you should know is that in the Philippines, education's not free. Even the K through 12 system. So basically you have to pay. Elementary, kindergarten, high school, you have to pay. And it's not that expensive, but in the Philippines, a lot of people are poor and they really can't afford education. And so a lot of kids grow up without that. So this school will offer free education and free meals and free school supplies. And for anyone that wants to become a teacher, I would support them in their education overseas, and then hopefully they'll go back and be a teacher in the school. The second person that I want to honor is my grandmother. So my grandmother, the caregiver, I want to build a hospital and name it after her. Again, also built in their hometown. Same kind of idea. Offer free healthcare and either free or cheap medicine. And for anyone that wants to become a doctor or nurse, I'll support their education overseas as well. The third person I want to honor is my uncle. So as I mentioned, my uncle was a retired military veteran, and in his life, he was deployed overseas and during the Vietnam War, and he's seen some things. In fact, he's done some things. He's taken other men's lives. And, you know, when you do that, it changes you. So after he retired and come back from war, he was never the same. I heard that he used to drink a lot. In fact, he would drink pretty much all day. And that's what led to him having liver cancer. So in honor of my uncle, I want to build a program that supports retired servicemen and servicewomen to give them employment opportunities when they retire from service, and also to give them any kind of counseling or support if they are experiencing any type of addictions or any type of PTSD. The last person I want to honor is my aunt. So I have an aunt who passed away back in 2012, 2013, and she was a dressmaker. So one of the ways that I want to honor her is tied to a story that that happened a couple months ago. So about 4 months ago now, I was on vacation in the Philippines, and I remember sitting in a coffee shop, just checking emails, working on my laptop, and I wanted to take a quick little mental break from that. So I closed my laptop for a little bit, and I was looking across the street. And what I saw was this young man. He had no shoes, and I saw him walk into a restaurant, and he talked to one of the employees, or maybe the manager or the owner of the business, I don't know. But they were talking, and after they were done talking, the young man proceeds to go around the entire restaurant and clean it. He would pick up all the dirty dishes, bring it to the kitchen. He would clean all the tables, sweep the floor, and when he was done working, he went back to the owner, or whoever that was, and the owner, or the person that worked there, give the kid money. He gave him money. And he walks out of that restaurant, he walks to the business next door, another restaurant, and he does the same thing. And the entire time that I'm watching, I'm like, damn, this kid is a hustler. Like, look at him working so hard. Like, you can't help but feel inspired by this kid and what he's doing. So I decided to put my laptop away, put all my stuff away, and then I wanted to cross the street and go meet this kid. So I walk over, and this young, bright man, and his name is Emilio. And Emilio's only 8 years old. And I approach him, and I stop him, and I say, "Oh, hi, I noticed that you're cleaning these restaurants." And he was like, "Oh, yeah." He cuts me off. He's like, "Oh, hi, sir, my name is Emilio, and I'm, do you have a business nearby? Like, I'm super handy, and I work really hard. I can clean your business, or whatever you need me to do, any small odd jobs around your business. I work for really cheap, and I'm happy to help you in any way that I can." And I am just floored, because here this kid is, he's only 8 years old, and he's like just super hustler, like way better entrepreneur than I am. Just like, this first interaction with a stranger, he's just like qualifying me and looking for opportunities right away. And I stopped him. I was like, "I'm sorry, Emilio, but I don't have a business nearby. I'm just a tourist here. I'm just visiting family." But I was really curious to understand what you're doing, because I was watching you, and so does your parents know that you're doing all this stuff? And he's like, "Oh, no, not really." And then I ask him the next obvious question is, why? Why are you doing this? And then he pauses, and he looks up at me with his wide eyes, and tears start coming out. And what he said was, "I'm working hard to earn money so that my mom doesn't have to sell herself for money. And I just start bawling my eyes out because, one, because I'm a mama's boy, as you know. And two, because imagine being 8 years old. 8 years old, and you're poor, and your mom's poor, and you found out that her job is prostitution. Like, imagine what that must feel like, at 8 years old. Like, at 8 years old, I was just playing with Legos and just doing my own thing, but man, it reminded me that prostitution is a massive problem in the Philippines and is across Southeast Asia. Number one, because of lack of education, and number two is lack of career opportunities. It's really hard to have a good career and be able to earn for your family. And so as a result, a lot of women do the next best thing that they can, which ends up being that. So to honor my aunt, who was a dressmaker, and to help these women, I want to set up a foundation to empower and educate women to become entrepreneurs in textiles and in fashion and clothing. So those are 4 specific things that I saw in my dream that I was going to build in the future. And, it's very big, lofty goals, and it's definitely not going to be cheap. But I've already got the money side figured out, I think. But I saw all of this in a dream. And then at the end of the dream, the most important person showed up. It was my uncle. And he said this thing to me, and it was one line. He said, "Michael, don't forget your promise. Don't forget your promise." 11 years ago, I stood over his grave and I made that promise. And then I forgot about it. I was, so focused on figuring out my life and focused on my career and trying to earn a lot of money. And I forgot the promise that I made. And when I woke up from the dream, nothing's been the same ever since. I started writing down all the things that happened in the dream, and it was so surreal because I remembered every single part of it, all of it, and I wrote it down on paper. And now, this is why I'm here today in front of you and in front of this camera, is because of the important gift that I want to bring to the world. And what I want to give is hope. Hope. I want to inspire you that are watching this video right now to share your stories, to have the courage and the bravery to open up and not be scared to share your message with the world, because you never know, someone out there could really, really need your story right now. It could be the exact thing that they need to hear. But if we never share it, who knows what can happen if we don't. And the reason why this is so important to me is because my lifelong mission is to reduce suicide in the world. If it wasn't for the heroes in my life, I wouldn't be here today in front of this camera sharing this message with you. Because the young version of me, the young version would have given up a long time ago. So if you're sitting there right now and you're in a dark place and you don't have anyone to talk to or anyone to support you in your life, and you're debating whether you should hit that escape button and just end it, I would strongly encourage you to not do that, because I want to tell you, if you're going through something right now, I want to tell you that you have a choice. You always have a choice to live a different life, a better life, a life filled with happiness and joy and friendship and love, one filled with fulfillment and success. And if you choose not to believe that, you said, no, I don't want to go on, I just want to hit that escape button, then you deny yourself of that choice. And it's going to affect people around you. I want you to understand that. So if you are in a dire situation, first thing I would suggest is call a suicide prevention line. They're always toll-free, and there's a lot of them around. I'm sure you can find the number online. If not, I'll make sure I include some in the description below. But please do that. And if you've gone to the end of this video, I want to let you know that I'm here for you too. I want to hear your story. I believe that there's a hero in all of us. I believe that the greatest part of ourselves is still hidden inside, and it's buried because of things that happened in our lives that, made us change our beliefs and change the way that we look at life. I feel that there's this Superman inside of all of us just waiting to emerge. But because of life, we've chosen to live as a Clark Kent. I know that there's a lot of problems in the world, bigger problems, even bigger than depression and the things that I talked about in this video. That's why I'm doing this, is to get you involved. Because I'm just one person. I can't do this alone. I can't fix all the problems. I need your help. The world needs more hope. And it needs more heroes who are brave enough to create it. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I hope you learned something. If you know someone in your life that's going through some things that may need this video and hear what I've shared today, please send this video to them. The second thing is, for those of you out there who are brave and want to step up as a hero, this video project is for you. If you're brave enough, I want you to get in front of a camera, as I did today, and just share your story. Tell the world whatever it is that you want to share, and what's the message to go with it. And once you've done that, there will be a link below with my email address. And with your permission, I'd love to post this video, or your video, onto my channel and create a series of all these beautiful stories of people's lives and share an important message to the world to want to create a positive impact. Really happy that I got to the end of this video, and I promise I'm not going to delete it. and it's going to be posted live as it is. And yeah, my name is Michael Alvaro, and that was my story.